Welcome back to the Horror Academic, or is it the Sci-Fi Academic? This will be our first debate tonight, but before I go any further on that, I have guests in the house. From Brook Reading Podcast, we have Melissa.
Hello.
And over here, we also remember from Dracula and other live episodes, we have Alison.
Hi. Anybody want a snack?
Sweet treat out of her face hugger.
So rad.
I have a biscotti, and it's a little stale, but yeah, there's an hazelnut biscotti in this. I just have to quickly say another thank you. The reason why I have this is because it was a bridal shower gift from dear Vic, my horror academic friend, and her husband. She went off registry for it, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's just certain things that are, needed that aren't on that,
yeah.
It's not needed.
In the frame.
It's needed. We know it's needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we both knew about it, and I mentioned it, and you're like, do you want that? And I was like, yes.
And I think it was at Melissa's birthday.
It probably was.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. We were looking at it on the phone, I believe.
Yep.
Thank
you. And you showed it to me like, oh, look at this. Is cool. I was like, oh, yeah, let me look at that on my phone. Oh, look at that. Got it.
Add to list.
Win-win. Yeah.
That looks really real.
We love it. It's gorgeous. I actually keep we keep a bunch of tea bags in here.
Nice.
It's not really a cookie house, even though we'd want to be, but for this, so
look,
cute.
yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, sorry.
Very cool.
Well made. Thank you. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Happy to help. So as you guys can tell from our prop this evening, we are discussing Alien.
Yeah.
We're discussing the first Alien. We're just discussing the singular Alien tonight because to discuss all of the aliens would take us about a week. So we're going to just do this one for now.
Yeah.
And so that's 1979 Ridley Scott Alien, written by Dan O'Bannon. Let's start off why we had to Avengers assemble for this one. Why was this talk so important for us to have together? I know you're a huge fan of the Alien franchise, and I knew we had to. There you go. Nice.
Hey, we girls can do anything, right, Ripley? Hey.
Yeah.
So we had to have this talk together, and recently, Melissa caught up and had watched the film, and we were having to talk about it. We're like, we gotta have this talk again for real, here. So I just wanted to make sure that we were all in the house for this one.
And thank you for it too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a movie that's so important, regardless of what genre it falls into. Just for genre in general, and especially in feminist circles, this is the holy film that there is. But why? Let's start off with, why is it a debate over what kind of film it is? Is it a horror movie or is it a science fiction movie? And does it matter? What do you guys think?
What was it originally touted as when it first came out?
It was, I think, science fiction, but they made it knowing that it was very much a horror film at the same time.
Right, because the tagline is, in space, no one can hear you scream.
Right.
Oh, so that's not, that doesn't feel like Star Wars.
Right.
That means some scary stuff is going to happen to you.
Right.
True.
And would you say that, I don't know if this is too lofty, that the sci-fi horror genre is its own thing and this is maybe the birth of it?
See,
or a new, not the birth, but maybe a fresh.
This was the next generation.
The next generation, yeah.
Because you can't
because it was hard. Sci-fi was scary, or it's meant to be that way. A lot of times, even starting how far back?
I mean, you want to say the 50s drive-in movies,
exactly.
All of those things, the original things, is kind of considered the pinnacle of that period's scary
and even
science
War of
fiction.
the Worlds.
War of the Worlds was a scary.
I mean,
and how many monster movies were really alien invasion movies?
Right.
So I think those two planes intersect a lot.
Yeah, because it came from the nuclear fear of war that was spinning around the globe, unfortunately. Maybe kind of still, but big time back then when our parents were younger and all that. So
I mean,
there was horror involved.
Even if you think like movies like Them, the kind of the giant, oversized radioactive monsters.
Is that the one with the ants?
Yes, them is the ants.
The
yes.
big ants. There were a lot of big bugs before it turned in big bugs, and then big-eyed, weird-looking, some usually campy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Were the monsters up until this groundbreaking monster.
This is maybe where it really started to get scary.
Yes.
But, I mean, you could even say that in the old school, because we talked a little bit about this recently back in December, I think, when we did Godzilla on the show.
Okay,
because Godzilla is very much a science fiction film. It is a radioactive monster that has been brought back because of the atomic bomb. That is a science fiction story.
Yes.
But it's also a scary movie at the same time.
Yeah.
So
because they consider Godzilla a monster in the pantheon of monsters, right? Or he's like in the branch adjacent to the big monster tree.
The family tree.
He's part of that.
There's like the universal monsters, and then there's the like kaijus, you know,
right?
Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it all works together, and I think maybe perhaps the genres weren't so separate until the 60s and 70s. Like in the 50s, I think it was a little bit more combined.
Right.
And maybe like you said, maybe it's because our fears were very science fiction in nature at that time. You know,
sure. I think so.
We're living in an atomic age, right? Nuclear family is scared of what's outside because, you know, what's running the power. But I think
isn't that also, I'm sorry. Isn't that also why a lot of them are called I keep thinking like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's like literally like an invasion. Like you said, perfect. Like nuclear family, you have a fence for a reason. You're keeping shit out. And then these big things, whether they're bugs or whether they're like what we first learned as grays, but we didn't figure out they were grays until last year. They're these big-eyed, like strange, awkward, weird things, and you don't want them creeping up into your cleanliness and your, breaking that,
And if you want to go with the 50s, you can use that as a representation for every other person, place, thing, or race that wasn't like the nuclear white family. Because it was them or they or body snatchers or invasion is what a lot of people had in their head because they were so afraid of the other that turned into movie monsters and of course what the Cold War scary things that were actually happening.
Yeah.
So fold all that in, the fear
that kind of escalates or kind of becomes the fear of next door.
Yes.
Which is the othering becomes instead of, is it the commies are the others or is it, like whatever, these fears we have from outside our borders, it becomes the fear outside of like you're saying with the picket fence. That's why in 1960, exactly 1960, that shifts, and now we're all of a sudden afraid of Norman Bates, who's otherwise a very normal-looking person who
this nice guy inside the house is now the monster.
Right, but it's the house next door to you, and that's why by 68 you have something like Night of the Living Dead. So we go from the idea of like the other is like all this outside crazy, the world outside our borders, and now it's like, or when our neighbors die, they're going to try and eat us, which is still, horror, even straight horror movies like that. There's people who, see still a sci-fi element in zombies, they're
I can understand that.
It's, you said it's mutations, it's biological. And it goes back to like, it's repelling this cleanliness that you work so hard for and you strive so, especially like 50s housewives and all that. And I can get into that.
And the family and what it's supposed to represent. And this is really America and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And everyone has to have this uniformity. And and that's why Invasion of the Body Snatchers is so scary, because when you feel like you're like fitting and in line and perfect and you are what you're supposed to represent, on the inside you aren't.
Right.
So it all works together. So I guess what we've basically decided is that genre is irrelevant.
Yes.
I agree. I think we're all with that. Here. Yeah. I'll raise an egg to that.
Nice. Always a cheap bottle of water.
Yeah.
Where it's not irrelevant, perhaps they all collapse. And horror genre, as we say in the horror world and the sci-fi world, where maybe the rest of the world is like, what's that mean? Genre to us is all of those things wrapped up together. And I think that's probably the best way to say it. So Alien is both. Yes. It is a genre movie. So Alien from 1979, just for those of you who may have started at maybe, I don't know, Prometheus, let's go back and discuss
what the heck were you thinking?
Well, it's a whole different timeline. What the hell? Why not?
That's true.
If you're going to start a new place, start there.
Yeah.
But
that was the beginning, actually.
But it's an alternate. It's like the Star Trek movies, right? Like, isn't Alien Aliens like 4 here,
Right.
and then like slightly parallel but behind is the Prometheus timeline, right?
Is that how that
I
works?
think it's a parallel timeline. Like how like everybody
Oh.
freaks out with the new Star Trek movies don't follow old Trek, and it's like, well, that's because it's
And
an alternate
Because it's an
timeline.
You guys
alternate
know that
universe of
better
how they
than
could have
I do.
possibly met. So is that
Right.
what Prometheus is like?
That's why I think Prometheus is giving a backstory that could be the backstory, but doesn't have to be a backstory.
Because it's kind of the beginning of how this all started, Mel.
Oh, okay.
But I had a student once who gave me an entire diatribe how Prometheus is actually the story of Jesus Christ, and I was like, and he's like, well, that's what Ridley Scott says, and I'm like, Ridley Scott says a lot of things.
He does.
I don't know if I believe half what he says. But
So
sure.
Jesus was a little bit of goo, and then this is how this happened.
Oh no, man, I don't know.
Alien goo. Go ahead. Mel, you should watch it eventually. We both liked it a lot.
Yeah,
it was very polarizing.
Okay.
Like
there's a lot of hate for that.
There's a lot of hate for Prometheus, but Vic and I were like, yeah, cool. And there were people that were like, this is garbage. And we're like, oh.
And then Covenant came out, I was like, I liked it too. I don't know. And I only one I can't say I'm like, oh, was part 4, but I've realized because I've never rewatched it. But
that's normal.
And you know, I kind of like 4. I haven't seen it in a while, but I always had a little place for it in my heart.
I only saw it the one time in the theater, and I'm not gonna lie, I fell asleep. So I'm sorry.
I saw it in the theater too. I know it's goofy.
It just didn't make any sense to me, and I'm like, I have no idea what the hell's going on, and took a nap. But
wow, it went from 79 to 90, 96, 97.
Yeah, this 4 was an anniversary.
And still going.
Yeah. And then the last 2 have been out.
Because Covenant and whatever else,
There's another one coming, right?
Yeah. Ridley Scott's like, I'm not stopping. You can't.
Yeah, he's like, it's a whole nother cycle.
Good for him, bro.
Yeah. He got it back, and he wants to keep it. That's what it is.
He's just like, it's mine. And
hey,
step off, camera.
Yeah. I'll keep going to them, even if I don't fully love them. I'm always going to love them
I'm always going to want to see what's next.
I'm always going to see what's next. I always want to see the creatures. I always want to be a part of that world. So
that's cool.
It's like I will see every Halloween movie that comes out. I don't love all of them.
Right.
I mean, I might not like every Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Okay. That might be a lie, except for the remake. But I mean, the point is I will see all of the movies in cycles that I enjoy and make my own decision after I see it.
That's how I am with the Star Treks. Exactly.
Right.
I ain't gonna let people be like, Beyond sucked. I liked it. Shut up. Like, or
if you can find something in it and it makes you happy in some way, or like I said, just to see the world continue and something else happen, I'm happy to be a part of that.
And that's why we like franchises. It's like not everything. Especially growing up as a Star Trek fan, you already went into it knowing, every other one's good.
Is that the like the roulette wheel of?
Yeah, it's like only the evens. I think is the rule.
I've seen most of just the movies. I know I didn't watch the shows enough, but I know the movies. But I don't know. There might have been a few. I think there's some movies I know. There's some movies I've missed.
There's like the next gen movies a lot of people missed, but those I like.
Those are the ones I saw.
Oh yeah.
I started. This is weird, right? Because I know I'm not a Trekkie, but I appreciate it. The first Star Trek movie I ever saw was the one with the whales.
Okay.
Yeah. And we saw that in the theater with my aunt and uncle, my mom and dad and me and my aunt and uncle for over Christmas.
Yeah, you told me that. Yep.
Yeah.
My family saw all of them.
Yeah.
Up until First Contact.
And then I would always see the movies, even though I wasn't watching the show, which I know is weird.
No, I didn't like the old show. I did not like original series Star Trek.
I know my dad watched it.
Yeah. I just never got into that. But I love Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. That was my niche. But those hadn't happened yet. And I still like the movies. It's just I didn't care for the show.
Right.
But I love the characters. That's the thing about all this is it's all out there to kind of, you don't have to love everything. You don't have to write off everything. And that's what I unfortunately see people, they get to a point where it's like, oh, now they're not any good anymore. So I give up on that. Why? You still liked the rest of it, so just keep the parts you like. That's fine.
Exactly.
But
I I'm
think
glad
that's
you brought up the characters, because I think that's what keeps a lot of people coming back. Like, that's why I didn't mind watching this a second time, and I'll watch it a third time, and I'll check out the other ones, even though, everybody's gone. But whatever, like, I'll see what
the
else.
one who matters is still there.
Right.
I know. But yeah, I'll see who else they give me in that situation. I dig it. And I just realized, I'm so stupid. I didn't realize that Ridley Scott directed this. Tony did Top Gun.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're bros.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, they are. And I always got them confused, and I was going over that today. Actually, I was like, which ones are the Tony? All the sci-fi sides of the action stuff is Ridley, and all the straight up action is Tony. Got it.
Yeah, I think Tony Scott just died.
Oh,
because I remember being like, oh man. But
I know there's a bunch of people in this cast who have recently passed away, so we should probably get to that stuff. But okay.
Well, you were doing your summary.
Yes, we digress. We did not even start summarizing. Alien is the story of I don't think we even know really the Weyland Corporation yet in this film.
No,
that
was saying the company.
The company.
That was driving me crazy.
So they are essentially workers for hire who are in the middle of space doing a job. And they are very much a non-unionized group who are in the middle of trade discussions and status issues and all of those types of things that come with traditional workplace settings that have nothing to do with outer space.
Exactly.
And while they're on this trip, where I believe they're essentially doing cargo runs, they pick up what at first they think may be a distress call. And that distress call, they divert to go find out what it is.
Because it is in the company policy. Some argue it, but it's in the company policy that if there is a life form, any kind of life form in distress, it's written in there that they do have to go investigate, even though they're not like there to save people. Right. They're doing their job like any of us would be like, but that's
they won't get paid if they go against company policy.
That's the big one, yeah.
So that's why they have to go.
Because like any of us, we're working to get money.
Right.
That's what's cool about
it's a contract job. Too.
Yeah.
Like
O'Bannon even said specifically space truckers.
Right. They're considered.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, they're a group of people like all working together to get the job, and they're all,
So the quick sum up at this point is that when they get there, they find something. That something is not good for them. It ends up on the ship, and all hell breaks loose. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit and talk about the people who made this movie. So we've already said some of these names, so let's kind of put them in place. Dan O'Bannon wrote the script. You guys will remember Dan O'Bannon from a couple episodes back where I talked about Return of the Living Dead. This is probably this is his second film. It's really the film that kind of pushes his career forward. He becomes kind of known as a genre writer at this point. His first film, which is Dark Star, which he did with John Carpenter, that was a science fiction spoof. It was a comedy, but O'Bannon was really annoyed that it fell flat, and he's like, it was either the what I think he said something like it was either the most successful student film ever made or the least successful real film ever made. But whatever it was, nobody laughed at the jokes. So he moves on and says, "That's it. I'm not going to try and write jokes anymore. I'm going to write a straight science fiction movie." So he partners up with his producer, and they start working on what becomes Alien. They try to shop it around. It is 1976. And nobody cares about science fiction, and nobody wants a movie with some people out in space, scary or not. So they kind of get stuck in the middle there. And then a little thing comes out in the theaters, and all of a sudden, 20th Century Fox, 20th Century Fox is scrounging through all their inboxes going, wait, what was that one with the spaceship? And then they find Alien.
Right. They're like, we need more science fiction, because Star Wars and Close Encounters was like sci-fi.
Yep.
Like up into the atmosphere right into the galaxy, and it's huge. And now the production companies or studios are like, what do we got? Sci-fi, what do we got? What do we got? And Fox they had this hanging around.
They had already spoken to them and had decided to pass. In that interim, O'Bannon and his partner bring it to Walter Hill, of all people, who is kind of B-movie extravaganza guy. And he made movies like The Warriors. So he's an action movie guy, but they're like, well, but he's outside the system. So maybe he'll be the right kind of, then he kind of gets it and he's like, I love it. We're going to change it. Sure, fine. I'll rewrite it. And they kind of take everything out of it. And O'Bannon is like, I can't work with this guy. And so this is this turmoil that's going on. And that's when, and meanwhile, 20th Century Fox was like, didn't we see some space movie? Thinking of 20th Century Fox, though, in our other past episode, we talked Planet of the Apes. So they have a history of science fiction at Fox. So they know how to do it. They just didn't have any interest at the time. So they get a hold of O'Bannon, they bring him in, and they start figuring out they're going to do this movie. One thing that's kind of, I think in all genre fans is kind of a disappointment sometimes, is when you hear people say things like, but I hate science fiction movies, but I'm going to make a science fiction movie. So what happens is you get all these guys at Fox who are like, but we don't want to really make a science fiction movie because we don't like those movies. And we don't like monster movies, so let's not make a monster movie. Meanwhile, here's a script of a science fiction movie featuring a monster.
Monster.
I was going to say, yeah,
with a capital M.
Yeah,
Little do they know how important this monster is.
So when they're shopping around to find the perfect director for this project, they're like, well, we don't want a science fiction guy because that'll be a bad movie. So luckily, though, the person that they pick, Ridley Scott had just put out his first film, I believe it's called The Duelist, but it had played well at Cannes and had won an award. And they're like, oh, get that young guy over in Britain. So that's what they do. So they pair him up. He reads the script, and after all these directors that they originally tried to get that were kind of...
They threw it to Spielberg, I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
They ran it by, like, young Spielberg.
Spielberg would have taken out all of the fun things in this movie.
I know. I think 5 people passed it up or so before Scott said yes.
And he was basically like, sure, but I hate monster movies. So they're like, well, then don't make a monster movie. So he decided to make it in his own artistic way. Which I'm not going to say is a negative, but
no,
it sucks going into it. We always have to be like, but we got to find the people that don't like the genre.
And this is, I know, goes back to your love and your heart, Vic, as much as you love horror, that why does everybody have to constantly like poop on it? They're like, horror, oh, that's tragic, garbage. Right. You're like, stop. And then this becomes this like gorgeous, beautiful, classic film that wins an Oscar.
But I think that's what makes it is like, okay, fine. We didn't limit the scope.
Right.
We broadened the horizons, maybe. Awesome. But know that all the guys who are behind the scenes that were making the models and making the costumes and all, they were all fans.
Exactly.
So
and that's where the love comes in of why it's as special as it is.
So it's still...
You can feel their love in it.
Right. There's definitely people who have a passion for science fiction who are working on this movie. So, but that's the oddness of that.
That is, yeah.
I will say, I know we were just talking quickly about the Scott brothers. The other Ridley Scott films off the top.
I feel like I've seen his name so many times, but I can't remember from what. And
I'll put out there, probably from like Legend. Director of Legend.
Yes, Mama.
Yes.
Of course, Legend. As a Tim Curry fan, Melissa Sak.
Allison, you know.
And a young Tom Cruise fan.
Yes, say.
Because that's his first, right? He's a sweet he's a little baby angel in that.
Baby angel.
Right?
Yeah, yes, that would have had to have been his first. When was that? What year did that come out?
Tim Curry pretty much is like the embodiment of sex.
In everything.
He plays a character in this, but especially in this, he plays a character called Darkness, which is like a giant devil.
I know the devil that he plays. He's
pretty much like a walking, talking erection. Vic isn't going to keep this in. Like he's just like sex.
It's impossible to like not realize that it's just that's what he's there for. He's like everyone is very pure, and he's just like busts in there and be like, screw it.
He's like, come on.
Yeah. Because he is the devil.
Even though, he's like the costumes built, and then obviously the way Tim just like leans into the character like he does.
86.
86.
Oh, so he had done mad shit before that, because he did Outsiders came out in like 83.
Oh, okay.
Risky Business came out in 85.
Okay.
Why do we know so much about Tom Cruise? What the fuck?
I've seen all those movies too.
I know, that's the thing.
The next thing that Ridley Scott does that just like blows the doors off everything is Blade Runner.
Yeah.
So,
which I've heard of, and I know that
you're like, I know that's a thing that exists.
Loves just passed away too. We were talking about people that just passed away recently.
Rutger Hauer?
Yes.
Yes.
Rutger Hauer he's another character who's just like alien and so non-human, but very human at the same time. And
yes.
All right, I'm gonna just list a couple of other big moments for Ridley Scott. So okay, so we said Blade Runner, we said Legend, Love It or Not, Hannibal.
Not sorry.
Yes, but it's still.
Yeah.
I like to say that he still keeps his big toe in horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that on a really bad date.
There you go.
And I was so excited, more than the date, to see the movie. The date was like a side. He's like, you want to? I was like, sure, but we got to see this movie. And I was like frothingly excited, and then it was such a bummer. But not too excited because Jodie wasn't in it. So, but I just finished the book.
Yeah.
And then the story went like not where I wanted it to go in the book, and
I remember you were very excited to see that. That's how I was with Saving Private Ryan. I saw that and I was super excited to see it, but the date I was with sucked. So, yeah.
I would also say I have not even seen this, but The Martian was a big deal. So that was also Ridley Scott.
We liked it.
I've heard it's very good. I just haven't seen it. And
I
of
recommend.
Course, what Ridley Scott, though, what's cool is that he came back to Alien, and he did both Prometheus, I can't speak, and Covenant. So,
he did. Okay. Cool.
And as fans, that we were really excited. That was the other thing.
Right. That's what was so great about those.
Right. When that Prometheus trailer, I was like, oh man! Every time it would play on TV, and I was getting we saw that opening weekend too. I was all like crazy nuts excited because it looked and felt like everything I wanted and loved. I feel like you could say that too, Vic, and then us enjoying it. Yeah, it's the reason why we love this franchise so much.
And it feels, yes, Alien as a
authentic.
Franchise doesn't always look exactly the same. Every person who's come to it has had their own vision.
As it should be, right.
Right, but it's a rare thing to see someone bring it back to the original vision properly. You know,
we've experienced that with other directors that didn't feel it's proper.
Well, there's directors who use a lot of green screen when they decide to come back to a story and get rid of actual character development and acting.
Yeah, and put in silly things like music numbers that no one knows or understands in languages that are dumb.
But I'll also say, I'm not gonna bash on some other domains, but I will say it was refreshing that Ridley Scott got he had the freedom to do that. Not many directors get that.
Really, because he's like, here's the flavor you love, and we're like, yes.
Here's let me go crazy this time, and really, now that I can really not have to worry about the studio, 20th Century Fox not giving me all the money that I need and telling me that we're gonna have to remove large chunks of this, and I'm like, no. And, now he can be like, no, I'm gonna make what I'm gonna make, and you guys are gonna put it out. That's how it works. So
that's awesome.
Amazing. Yes,
that can
dream of any artist, right? Really.
Prometheus was 2012. Covenant was 2 years later.
Yes.
3 years later, somewhere in that range. So it's all very I still call this new and recent.
Yeah, totally.
Younger than us may not, but. So aside from just Ridley Scott, and this is one of the things I do want to talk about this film, is that it's not one singular vision. It's very much Dan O'Bannon's vision here too. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, yes, Dan O'Bannon did eventually go on to make Return of the Living Dead, which to me is kind of his opus, but that's just me. And he did Dark Star. He also so many scripts that he worked on that are huge, like Dead and Buried, which is another kind of B-level, maybe not mainstream horror, but excellent movie. The movie Heavy Metal, he did some of the writing for that.
Oh, very cool.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
How about he wrote Life Force and Invaders from Mars, so he did a back-to-back Tobe Hooper thing, which was pretty cool.
Your bro Toby.
Yep.
Yeah.
Total Recall is another one that I love. Not the smartest sci-fi movie ever made.
No, but a big old fun time.
Yeah, it is. And
I
they're
was
like
just
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
we rewatched it last year.
Yeah.
Ed and I were talking, and I was like, I haven't seen Total Recall in a long time. And funny enough, there was a house party a few houses down that was super loud. It was during the summer. And I was like, we need a loud movie to put on so we don't hear the party. And we were like, let's put on Total Recall. It's a big old crazy time. Yeah. And we were like, anything with Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
To drown out the party down the street.
Of course, there's the being like a teenager when that movie came out, and me and my brother would pick up every science fiction film as it came out and to rent, and then remembering how much I loved it. It comes on TV, and my dad's like, "Oh, is that Arnold Schwarzenegger? I like Arnold Schwarzenegger," and forgetting the whole thing about the three-breasted hooker,
the three-boobed alien scene.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
My dad too is a Schwarzenegger fan, and he had that and and Predator, like that was always playing in the house. Like those were like the VHSs my dad had, so he was always watching them. Yeah, there was always sci-fi was much to the chagrin of my mom. There was Ron and Allison. We're like, yeah, sci-fi action horror, and she's like, oh, it's loud and gross and and she'd always have to go hide because even with Alien, that's the Alien franchise is something I share with my dad, like a love for that. And we see those movies together. Like we saw me and Ed and Dad saw Prometheus together. And my mom was like, I'll be shopping, at the mall, and I'll meet you. Nice. So that's like even like a family thing in my bonding with my father is this film, and my poor mom has to hide in the den and be like, it's so loud and gross.
Whereas my mom was the one who was watching old science fiction movies with me growing up, and my dad had like
so cool.
Zero interest.
He didn't want That's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you always had good movie buddy times with your dad, Al. Like that's
my poor mom was like when Star Wars is all encompassing with the family and like The Princess Bride. But if anything got gross or creepy, she was like 186, like I'm out of here. And then Dad and I were like, yeah. We're like, we need more aliens. And she's like, oh.
Okay, so all that to say, I think it's a shared vision here between two minds, but it's orchestrated by so many more. But so that it can't just say it's a Ridley Scott movie. This is Dan O'Bannon says this is a Dan O'Bannon movie. So I mean, both of them were kind of right. Dan O'Bannon, by the way, is another person who's passed away in recent times, and also, by the way, was a little crazy. So he was a little off.
Some people are.
Yeah. The other thing that you can't forget was like a huge force in making anything to do with Alien look like Alien.
Eager.
Yep.
Yes.
I did not know until recently that he'd already put out the first book.
Yes.
And it was his art was already out there that was Alien. So
in 1977, his Necronomicon book, that airbrush book of all his like biomechanical art, like his look that he was developing already existed. And Scott, I think it was O'Bannon, saw it and told Scott, you need to see this.
O'Bannon saw that before Scott was even part of the project.
Okay, right, yes.
So I got some of this recently. I was watching some of the documentaries and filled in some of the gaps. I didn't know until like this morning. Yeah, so
was I.
O'Bannon worked on, was part of the crew of people working on Jodorowsky's Dune.
Yes.
I did not know that's how he met Geiger.
Yeah, which is...
That's insane.
Yeah, wild how everything kind of starts to click in together. So Geiger had already had his Necronomicon book, which was the look of this stuff, which wasn't attached to Alien at all yet. It was just, this is the art he made. And then O'Bannon sees it, and there's two specific drawings. It's Necronom 4 and 5, which is 100% with the eyes removed, the alien xenomorph creature that we know today. This little
there he is.
Yeah. Here we go. Where's your pop it out? Hey buddy. How you doing?
Actually, I said he. It's a female, isn't it?
The original
those drones are they're gonna be, I think they're gonna be male, because if we want to do the like wasp bee analogy, which it was also based on, I believe those are drones, but they do need both of them to.
Is it asexual though?
Yes, I think they're asexual, but there's a way that they work with the queen and then she lays the eggs that creates them, and it's the cycle.
Which is why they have to incubate in a human host for it to be able to have it's so. Yeah, I guess it's true then. So these guys are male because they're the sperm carrier.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought with the eggs that and yes, I heard her referred to as the queen, so that's why I thought, but maybe that's another
queen. You haven't seen that yet.
Later.
Yeah, there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you'll watch the plural. Watch the next one with the S and all that is pretty rad.
Plural.
Right, but they bring Giger on, his drawing that already exists, and we're like, this is the look we're looking for. We just want to take that. He becomes part of the art team that creates the set of, LV-426, the planet, the derelict spaceship, everything inside the ship, the whole, the egg room, the incubation station. and I was watching a documentary too, one that actually Giger made himself in around that time, where I'm watching him carve giant foam statues with the crew. He's just sitting there, he's painting stuff, he's carving the statues, and he actually has someone else narrating it because I think his like Swiss accent was too thick. Yeah. So it's like his words, but somebody's narrating it over this documentary where he's like, and they wanted to bring him in and be like, we just can't take the alien. We love what you're creating. So that whole world needs to be created by you. Mm-hmm. We have somebody else working on the ship and the human aspect, but you are going to create this whole world because it really is your vision that we're in love with, and it fits our script so well. And so he has a team where he's physically working on this stuff, and you can watch it in those documentaries, which is just so awesome.
I think he's also at this point part of the I guess to go back a little moment on the timeline of trying to get the movie made. There's a suggestion to do what Star Wars did and to get a concept artist in. And so the concept artist draws these beautiful ships that become like the Nostramos, so that look of it, that angle of it, the kind of hard sci-fi of the film comes from bringing in like Ron Cobb, and other artists to help conceptualize, so that the producers, the potential production studios, could get a visualization of this is what this is going to look like. And then bringing in people to make that happen too. So you have kind of two worlds brought together, and there's so many artists involved in making a unified vision that's I think really one of the great stories of Alien.
Yeah, it really is. And usually with so many artists involved, you could say the heads butted heads and there were issues. But as far as we see, I think from both of us watching the documentaries and extras and knowing about it, it all worked really smoothly.
Yeah.
And the two different worlds created by like the two different teams, worked side by side. Like there's footage of Giger making the suit, and he was in a wooden box creating it because they didn't want the cast to see it. Because it was also a surprise.
Yeah.
Because they tried to keep that away from the cast as much as they possibly could to add more of the shock value. And I wanted to just call out the actor in the suit because I learned a lot about
that story too. Yeah.
Balaji Bajeho, who was just a 6'10" graphic artist who was from Nigeria and living in London. And part of the casting, a casting agent was in a London pub in Soho, because they were talking about who they're going to get. Actually, Peter Mayhew was tapped for this because they were like, who's a tall guy who can fit into suits? Like, who better than Chewbacca? Yeah. They were looking at mimes, basketball players, because you had to be really tall, you had to be thin, and you had to be able to move in a certain way. And there was even a famous German actress, Veruschka von Lendorf, who they were considering too. She's 6'3". Okay. So that's the ideas they were tossing around, and just casting agent happened to be in this Soho pub, and he turns around and there's this 6'10" Nigerian dude, and he's like, you're the one. And he gets approached, and he calls back, and he's like, this is the person we need. And that's the only film that this man has ever been in, and he was the first alien.
And there was different people playing the alien for different parts, but for
Right.
most of the kind of primary scenes, like the hero scenes we would call in
Right,
kind of
where he's
special
like
effects, it's him
standing and he's hiding, and at the very end where he's
directly interacting
Yeah.
with the cast. There's other moments where they needed someone who had different skills, so they had stunt doubles for
right
others
where
that-
the alien was hanging from something. You have to
right,
have
that
like
had
a
to be an
professional.
acrobat who had to do that. They didn't want to put the other
Right.
guy in harm's way. So there are other people who, for in the Evil Dead world, we'd call them fake shemps. Like the
Yes.
people who were just like the hand wasn't necessarily always him. If you see
Right.
a hand, sometimes it could be somebody else. So he was the person who they essentially mold a suit around.
Yeah, this
And
suit's
that's how it
created
looks
for
that way.
him.
Yeah.
And he's being put into it, and it was like extremely uncomfortable. He
I'm
could only
sure.
be in it for about like 15 to 20 minutes because how hot it was.
Oh, wow.
And
That's with
there
everything
was
assembled.
yeah, with everything assembled with the head on. He said there were little holes that he could see out of if he stood still, but if he was moving, it was like super difficult to even know where he was going. And then that head is mechanically manipulated by you probably know the name of the men.
Oh, I don't
He's
remember.
famously worked on.
There were so many special effects people involved in this movie.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
Here's the bonus of all of this happening when it does, is that, and I didn't even think about this until I was watching these documentaries, it's shot in London.
Yes, they're on a soundstage.
So what else was being shot in London in like 1980-ish? Oh, I don't know, Star Wars stuff.
More Star Wars was happening.
Right. So they had a lot of the people who had come off of Star Wars kind of end up getting pushed into Alien next, and some of them are actually having contractual issues with already being booked to do Empire.
Oh,
So there's
That's
people who are coming
intense.
and going. Yeah, so you have people who start off on the movie and then have to leave to go to Empire Strikes Back, or then there's people who are done on Empire Strikes Back that end up on Alien for a minute. So there's so many crews working on this, and that's what's amazing also, is that it all comes together and it makes sense and works in that, because there's so many hands involved.
No, so I love that besides Giger physically working on this thing, and he's taking his drawings and his art, and now he's making it a 3-dimensional, actually moving piece of art. He's in this area that's cordoned off in like these wooden panels where he's creating the suit and putting everyone in it. It's made from like real organic material too, besides just like the foam and the latex. I know there's a real animal vertebrae for the tail. The head has an actual human skull in it that the bigger parts built around.
Wow.
This was the funny parts, especially because Giger's work is known to be like extremely overtly sexual. The slime coming out of the alien's mouth is KY jelly. And vats of KY. They said they had to call every hospital and pharmacy around to find out how much they were allowed to buy, because they keep needing more. And one of the quotes was, these people probably thought we were sex addicts, because we're like, how much KY jelly are we allowed to get from you? And
there was someone on the crew whose job was to spread
be like, I need like 20 gallons of KY jelly. Can I get that?
And just rub everybody down.
Exactly. And the musculature and the parts of the mouth are all condoms.
Really?
Where the muscles right here, the muscles move and the lips stretch out.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's funny enough that meshes up with like Giger's like super sexualized world, and the creatures are. Every part of the creature does have, because that's how he creates his art. That's part of like what he sees in his art. And it's also obviously part of the story of something that is impregnating, laying eggs and impregnating in a host to parasite.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the condoms and KY were an integral part of the xenomorph creation.
Oh, wow.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
I feel like your listeners, I'm learning so much. This is just the coolest thing ever. Like, and that kind of goes back to us too, talking about the before of the gender of the different aliens too. Like, that's interesting. I didn't know all of that.
And it was a really great interview in one of the sections that I was watching. They talked to all the cast about being there and what the experiences were like and blah blah blah. And I know we haven't gotten into the cast yet, but
I can't wait. That's my jam.
So there's a great line from Veronica Cartwright saying how
your buddy.
Yeah, I can't not think about the Brook Reading
rabbit hole.
Yeah. Veronica Cartwright conundrum.
Was this another reason why you needed to be here so you can like continue that conundrum?
Yeah.
But she talks about, she's like, you know, how could you not, when you show up on these sets and you read the script and you see everything, it's all sexual. I'm walking through vagina-like openings on a spacecraft that have long, cavernous, womb-like, partitions and walls. And then, you know, the thing that bursts out of the guy looks like a big penis. So, you know...
And which it does have, that's the inseminator. I don't know if it has a name, is because he even the face hugger, well, the thing that comes out of the face hugger and into the person. And there's even, I mean, Giger originally drew this as like a penis with two hands on either side.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there's the side that like pulsates, that's like a scrotum. We're being really clinical. The other thing that I thought was interesting is he originally had the egg with just an opening like this, and it was too vaginal that the Catholic countries, Spain and Italy, would have banned the movie. Oh, wow. So he just added another vagina, and now it looks like a cross, but they said luckily nobody, they're like, luckily they didn't notice that. So that's why there's 4 flaps instead of the 2, because it wouldn't play in those 2 countries.
Interesting.
So it's even more. I was like, so it's double vagina, but they didn't. That didn't bother them.
No.
Or a crucifix, but you know, I'm glad they didn't pay attention.
But that's even like when you were discussing like Geiger and his work that was already out, Necronomicon. For me, that will forever be the books behind the counter at Barnes and Noble as a kid.
Yeah,
you weren't allowed to look at those, and nobody was allowed to touch them, and you were buying them. So it's just like that was the like. The
I have a collection of collected works, but I don't have just that.
Right,
I have the bigger thing that came out, a while back that had like a whole bunch of stuff in it.
But yeah, I mean, it was evident to anybody and everyone that his work is of a sexual nature. But it's also interesting, like you were saying, how that there's organic matter in the suit. They were using organic matter to make the ship that he designed, the inside of the ship with those rib-like caverns.
Yeah,
they're using real bones.
There are bones. That's right. There's bones.
He even says there's a part where it was a very hot day when he went to visit the set one time, and it's just whatever butcher they got those bones from, they didn't clean them so well because it was kind of wretched in there, and he had to go home. Like.
How many stories do you have, Vic, talking about horror movies where they use the real matter and the cast and the crew were like, we're having a rough time right now, guys? And you're just like, fight through it. We got to shoot this.
All of them. I mean, I think
how much
Day of the Dead.
You're Walking Dead. Night of the Living Dead.
Day of the Dead is the best one because it's the gut boy.
That's the best.
Caro's gut boy.
Yeah.
And there's of course the guy whoever it was who tripped on the electric cord for the fridge that held the guts.
Oh, that's right. That's the story.
Break. That's the best. Go back. That's in an episode. And then just Texas Chainsaw. Let's go back to the shooting the dinner sequence where literally the head cheese, which was real head cheese, the bones that were real animal bones, and it was 100+ degrees. Things were catching on fire while they were filming that sequence.
I just have to say, if you want to make it real, you got to go there.
Make it real,
because you feel it, even if you don't know it, and you're watching it, and you're not even automatically realizing it. I feel like there's something in us that's feeling that the realness of those films.
And I mean,
so it gets you a little more on the like base level. You're like, oof.
Yeah. I mean, of course, there's points where there's people who have spoken out about certain films, the way that they use real. I know in the Cursed Films documentary, they really addressed the issue with poltergeist.
Of course, the skeletons.
But that was also common practice. So I mean, think about every high school anatomy class. So they were buying from the same.
Those skeletons came from somewhere before they started to make them.
Yeah. So I know that there's humanitarian side to this.
Yes,
but at the same time, these are theater practices from long before film was even a deal. You know.
Yeah. Well, we want to talk about like Burke and Hare and body snatching. That stuff fetched a really good price back in the day, and it was like a lucrative job market.
So Frankenstein, the whole Frankenstein story happened because there was actual body snatching going on, and it was
Victorian England were like, how we make money.
I was going to say there was a serial killer that sold his skeletons to schools, and they just thought he was like a legit businessman, but he's just like, little did you know, I'm the one that got the skeleton because I
people just didn't ask questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Grave digging was like, it wasn't even as Well, mass graves were more common too back then.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, but all of this is an interesting history lesson that would be a
Exactly.
totally different show one day.
Good to know.
I didn't know any of that stuff about the design. That's really cool. That it was a legit like vertebrae, legit like an organic one, like a natural
Yeah.
one. You said that was so cool to know.
There's a lot of, I mean, that's why the film looks as good as it does. There's just so
Yeah.
much stuff that's time-honored tradition, you know,
That's
like
true.
what I did not want to forget to say about the design of the alien is that there's the discussion with, I believe, O'Bannon and Geiger together. I'm not even sure if maybe Ridley Scott too. There was a decision at some point to remove the eyes.
Yes.
That it should have no eyes because it would be, the less human it is, the more terrifying it is because you don't know what you don't know who's the person that it's paying attention
exactly.
to. Yeah, I thought that was pretty intense too.
Right. That was the only thing from the original drawings that they took away.
Yeah.
But it's 100% like it mirrors what Giger already created prior.
And it's also, as we're talking about all these different crews of people who are involved in this film, and I think that's part of so important why the film stands up so well, why the film is still so beautiful, as opposed to, not that most science fiction movies don't have the ability, but it wasn't common. It's because it's this kind of craft, and it's this mixing of the different layers of work. That's so many people working on the miniatures themselves becoming massive structures.
Yeah.
You have matte work and matte design to kind of integrate, which is all things we can say about Star Wars too.
Of course.
But and even Planet of the Apes is another film that's amazing for its use of mattes as a way to kind of create the world and the art of the world. But I think that's just such an important part. It's we think of it as a film with amazing cinematography, but it's because they make all of these things that look so real.
Yeah.
In these real handmade situations.
Right, and that's why it shows up, because that was something I was even telling Mel when I was talking about it. Watching, every time I watch it, and one of the reasons why I love Alien and the franchise is how beautiful it is to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I say that, I'm also reminded of, I sound like now it's kind of the running theme of the villain in all these movies, is that the people that are obsessed with these creatures think they're beautiful and perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's what kind of, that takes it into being like, but we have to take it and I'll do whatever it means necessary to have one of these to study it. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I agree. You're yeah, but I agree with you because they're beautiful and gorgeous. You know, and even Giger says a monster isn't just something disgusting. It can have a kind of beauty. And they refer to this creature as, you know, the perfect organism. And that's what it's like there to represent. And that's why it looks how it does. So then everything in that world created is so beautiful. I was telling Mel, I'm like, I don't forget it, but every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, this movie's gorgeous.
Yeah.
The shots are gorgeous. There's like these beautiful pictures of Ripley and her helmet, and it's like lit so beautifully that it's a really pretty picture of Sigourney Weaver, but there's like horrible nightmare distress happening at the same time. But if like I just freeze a frame, I did that today. I like froze a frame and like took a shot, like a screenshot. And I was like, it's just a really beautiful picture. Everything about it within the ship, and then the world that's created is newer to. Prior to this, no one had ever seen it. That's another reason why this is such a huge deal.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the actors talked about the fact that Sigourney Weaver was really kind of honing in on the fact that what made this movie so different from science fiction before it, more than anything, it looked like a real place.
Yeah.
It didn't look like some perfect future land. It didn't look like some absolute like it was dirty. It was gritty.
Right. Where I was going to say like a
real
color,
people live there.
like a popped of color, crazy upside down, which is fun for science fiction too.
Right.
We all love that, but it didn't have that world to it. This could have felt like it could really exist.
I mean, I love movies like Forbidden Planet.
Yeah.
But in Forbidden Planet, the surfaces are so shiny Like everything is so
sci-fi was very shiny.
Yeah,
Even the monsters and the suits and
metals. It was all clean surfaces, and here there's no clean surfaces.
No.
Everything looks aged and it looks wet. It's a damp,
grimy, damp, moldy.
Everybody's wet and sweaty.
Musty.
Everything looks like if you touched it, it's grimy.
I'm gonna say the word that everyone hates: moist.
Moist.
I don't like it either. But that's what it is. Yeah, it's a clammy, damp, dirty, grimy, real world that you would think of, because if it's referencing like bugs and insects, or even if you want to say like something reptilian, so you think like boggy, muddy, misty. That's even like the egg hatchery, with the other mist. And just a fun thing that I found out about that blue light, the blue laser that they use for that was borrowed from The Who.
They were in the studio next door, right? They were using the lot next door.
And they're like, let's smoke that up, and then they let them use a blue laser to like do that the blue mist that's above all the eggs.
That's cool.
I learned that this week research. I was like, cool.
Yeah,
more fun, so
many cool things, and that's because
British trivia.
It's one of those situations of artists getting to play, and you don't see that anymore. And I mean, of course, it's cliche to think a group of people who their life's work was visual effects and miniatures and all of these models and things, all of them to say, well, our work will never be replaced by CG because this won't ever work like that.
Exactly.
And I think we're only now the world maybe is starting to agree with that, and we're going back to doing things.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I feel like people like us have been waiting forever for it.
Yeah. I mean, CG is good for things you can't possibly.
Yeah. If you can't make, the Hulk wasn't going to work in a suit.
Right.
No.
So you have to create.
I mean,
you have to create that as CG.
Yeah. I mean, I even was talking about this in my class the other day. It's like why is there such a boom of fantasy now? Like, why are we just in the past 10, 15 years making movies of books written at the turn of the century? And it's because you couldn't make a dragon. All right? That's tough.
Yeah, that is really tough, because they tried, and we've seen it, and it was usually on probably Mystery Science Theater.
Right.
And you're just like, that's rough.
Yeah.
It's only so many Gorgos before you give up on making a real... real live breathing monster. But so CG has its place. If you want to make, not that World War Z is the best zombie film, I'm not declaring that in any way, shape, or form, even though the book is.
Book was good. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Book was good. Mm-hmm. Movie was an okay action movie that wasn't based on that book. But I will say, if you want hordes of zombies, you need CG.
You have to, because even that many extras, you can't.
Nobody could afford that.
No, you can't afford that.
Yeah.
You can't. There's not that many cheese sandwiches in the world.
Exactly.
But look, you guys said it already. Like, first of all, there's only 7 people in this movie, so there's not massive crowds. There's not whatever, and there's so many close-up. Like you talked about Ripley, Al, in the helmet. Like, there's so many close-ups on them. Half of the scenes are just them like living normal life, eating sandwiches, smoking a cigarette, whatever.
Lots of cigarettes.
Lots of cigarettes. I know.
It's the 70s.
Yeah, that's the thing that I joked around. If I could just interject, I know I don't want to interrupt what you're saying, but I actually wrote that in my notes. When they all wake up from stasis, this is now a cliche that bothers me because it gets to me quickly. The waking up from stasis and immediately throwing up cliche in every science fiction movie. They don't do it in this.
Right.
And I was like, they don't have the barf out of stasis. When I watch a lot of sci-fi, I'm like, they're probably going to throw up. And there's always, because then I get like, it's like the Stand By Me, where I think I'm going to get sick because I see someone else. It's like throwing up in movies is a tough thing for me. I'm like, So I know it's almost like I'm expecting it, but they didn't do it. But I wrote, nobody threw up from stasis, but everybody's smoking a lot.
Yeah.
It was probably why.
It just like changed those things.
But it's funny that you said that, like, and I don't know a lot. I don't know how many movies I've seen. I could probably count on one hand with the whole waking up from those like pod things.
Prometheus, that it's in that show. There's like wake up and barf.
But I noticed that one of my first notes, actually, there's 6 minutes of the movie before you even see a person. So when you do finally get to the people,
I want to talk about that too, because I love that.
I know, me too. But like when you do finally get to a person, you see one of them wake up. He looks very like he doesn't throw up, but he looks like he might, and he's just kind of like doesn't really know where he is. He's just kind of like feeling around, going, "What the fuck's going on?" And sorry, and and then just like uncomfortable and like unsure. And I'm like, I mean, not like I'm waking up with birds flying around me when I wake up in the morning, but I don't look like I'm gonna vom everywhere. Like they don't look good.
And it makes sense, and they shouldn't, because how long were they asleep for, or they were hanging out?
They're doing this in intermittent stages as they go through
they go through all their like orb gathering.
Oh, okay.
So you've got I even equate it to being put under for surgery. That's how I feel like it would feel.
Oh, yeah.
That's whenever I watch it, I feel the feeling of
anesthesia
wearing off, and I was like, and it sucks. I actually, maybe it's because I'm allergic to anesthesia, and I actually get nauseous, and I will throw up unless they give me all the drugs to keep me that way. Yeah, and my surgery like 2 years ago, that's always my fear. But every time I watch that, I go right back to the feeling of waking up from it. I was like, it's got to be like this, and that's the worst.
Oh, God,
where you're like groggy and weird, and you're just like,
yeah.
The other cliche of pods is, you go the Planet of the Apes route where someone doesn't make it. There's no cracked dead body, that you have in Planet of the Apes. It's kind of like there was supposed to be a woman on the crew so they could colonize, blah blah blah, but she died. But
wah wah.
Really
bummer.
I could do a whole thing on that.
You could.
So that's another cliche that's not used in this situation. You could have easily said, oh, but it does raise a question to me.
Yes.
Where the hell is the cat in that scene?
Where is Jones? I don't know.
She's in her box, or he's in his box.
Hey, Jones, but isn't in a pot. You're right, because he doesn't jump out with anyone. Like, whose job was it to hold the cat while you were under? Because there is a cat carrier. Jonesy has a cat, his own cat carrier.
Well,
I don't know if it's.
She puts him in her pod.
Yes.
With her. So maybe he just always sleeps with her, but we didn't see her wake up.
No, but he didn't like jump out the.
Right.
And everybody was waking up.
That's always my thought. Like,
I never thought of that. It's a great question.
I want a half-size pod for cats.
Oh, it's like on next to the person, the little cat pod that opens up.
Like, here's your pod. Here's your cat pod.
Yeah. It's a great point, Vic.
It is.
I appreciate that. Someone answer this question.
100 years old.
Right down below. Where was Jonesy?
Tell me. I want to know this one because that I was worried about his
Jonesy's pod. I was worried about the cat. I mean, many of my notes are like kitty. Like I just wrote.
I know.
But then by the end, I'm just like, oh my God, if it's between you surviving and the kitty, leave the kitty.
The last time we watched this, the 40th anniversary that Ed and I got, he's just like, let the cat go. And he loves animals. And I'm just like, well, it's kind of causing an issue right now because she's like going back.
I was saying the same thing, and I have one. I was just like,
I was going to say, you guys are both cat owners.
Yeah. No, I'm done.
I don't know. I don't know if I would have done all that.
You're not going after shampoo if it's between you.
She would have killed me. She would have hurt me just as bad.
Maybe she probably would have attacked the alien. You could have gotten away. She'd have been like, I got this. You're like, all right, peace. Bye. Good luck.
Throw a cat at it and run.
Thanks for your service.
Yeah. It was a pleasure serving with you.
Yeah.
I'll remember you fondly and name cat shampoo too. Got it. Move on. Snowball.
Yeah. Ball too. Yep.
Wait, there was something you wanted to say about the opening, Alex.
Oh no, it wasn't about the opening necessarily, but I was just saying how things are so detailed, but not in like a creepy, weird, like computery way. Like you could, just looking at like the first 6 minutes that Allie and I were talking about where you don't see people, there's so much detail. I'm like, I could almost touch my TV and like touch the wall. Like it looks so cool. But go. I
love those first 6 minutes without people, but there's still movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's what's so cool about it, and that's what sets the creepiness. It's slow,
dude,
and there's little things. You hear some noises. There's that, I don't know what that one thing is that's kind of besides the little like birds on the drink thing, like that little. There's like something bouncing in the background.
There's like kind of on the chain. They like I don't know what those are either. They look like cat toys to me.
Right, and there's still like little bits of movement that I think are like brilliant in setting like. I'm trying to think of what it was like to see this and know nothing about it.
Yeah.
Because even though I didn't watch Alien until I was like I'm trying to think. I know it was before high school. Maybe it was middle school or early high school.
Okay.
But I had already seen Spaceballs.
Right.
And Alien had become it was such a phenomenon already that I knew about you knew about what did it look like? You knew about a chest bursting scene because you probably saw it in clip shows or when people reference it on TV.
With the face hugger too.
Right. So I knew that existed in the movie called Alien that I hadn't seen yet. I saw Spaceballs as a young kid being a fan of Mel Brooks, and me and my best friend Krissa loving him and then loving Star Wars and then renting Spaceballs. This looked funny, one sleepover, her mom not really paying attention to the rating and what was in Spaceballs, and then having him play and be like, it's too late now, and then that becoming a favorite movie.
Yeah.
So there's the scene where John Hurt is also in a little space cafe.
Yes.
He was cool enough to come back and play his role where he's having like soup or something.
Yeah, he's having a little soup.
And then they're all laughing and he's part of the cafe. And then he goes through his same situation where he says, oh no, not again. And then it's hilarious. And then we all know that it bursts out of him and then it puts on a top hat and has a cane and
Hello,
it sings,
baby.
hello,
My darling.
hello, my darling. And it does a little number across the counter of the space cafe and goes away.
Oh my God.
That's one of the many
43-year-old woman that's still funny.
It's still funny. Hilarious. And like when you watch Spaceballs and you're a fan of that movie, you wait, you're like, oh, here it comes. One of the many hilarious jokes in that. So I knew about that before I actually saw Alien. So I'm like, think of what was it like for the people who went into this and had no idea what it was going to be like and how like terrifying it is for that opening. When I'm thinking, are they thinking they're going to see it in the first 6 minutes? There's a few things moving. It's relatively quiet.
Yeah.
I even love the shot of the two helmets. So that when the spaceship starts to communicate, it projects the communication on the helmet. So it's almost like two humans are talking, but they're not human, but it's like the helmets that are people or human-like or having a conversation before the actual humans wake up.
Yes.
And there's even when the door opens for the pod, there's like a wind. There's like, I think I wrote back, someone was talking about negative air, if it's an actual scientific thing. Like there's air in the pod room that was supposed to be like the purest air to cut out bacteria. So that's why there's wind that moves a little, like the jackets in the corner when that door opens, because you don't think there's supposed to be like wind inside.
At the end, that happens in that cab too, because you see that book move, and that's why you don't know if it's the alien or if it's just the
so I try
reprocessed air or whatever, like
so it's already giving you a feeling of like, why is this moving? What am I going to see? Is something going to jump out now? How's it going to happen? The tagline is, in space, no one hears you scream, but what am I screaming about? Because I don't even know what this thing is going to look like or what's going to happen to people. I just think that's brilliant.
It is.
And then they kind of have a normal average people working on a job time until, was it like 45 minutes or so?
Yeah. But to also think of that in context of the time period, what would everyone have known before this? Isn't Star Wars really? It's 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
A film that would relate to it more than Star Wars is, but it's the polar opposite. It has, because I was even writing that in my notes. I forgot how slow and plotting the opening is, and that felt like Kubrick's film.
Very much, because 2001 takes its time.
It takes a lot of time.
It's a lot of time. I've actually only seen it once. That's
I never rewatched either. But I'm not gonna say, and I think everyone on this channel knows I'm not a Kubrick fan.
I know you don't like Stan. I do, but that's not something that I could just sit through.
Right.
But I'm glad I did at least once.
But that came up in some of the documentary too. They're saying, here's this cold, hard, clinical future space. Versus this is a working man's space. This is space with real normal people in it, not these kind of hyper,
not like warriors, princesses, wild, fantasy.
Yeah. Right. So
fairy tale space.
It's almost like it's a space in between. Here's 2001, here's Star Wars, and here's Alien in the middle, saying we're not either of these things. But we're going to take a little bit from each.
Right.
Because you can also, at the same point, look at that flyby early scene and think of every opening of every Star Wars movie where you have
a giant spacecraft.
Pan
Yeah.
over top of a destroyer or something
Yeah.
relevant. So
Yeah.
there's definitely motifs from each of those films, and that is kind of the trilogy, I guess, at that point of what science fiction in kind of this modern era was.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just really, I would think people sitting down to watch it that aren't thinking Star Wars are thinking 2001.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You guys talking about how this is dirty and how that's not like really fitting into the idea of what audiences at that point thought space, like this is what it's like, whatever, because I loved actually how you said it's like the working man's space movie. Like the characters themselves, none of them are the hero. None of them are really the villain either. They're just like, what would you do in that situation if you're just you? And like you said, you're just trying to make a living. You're just trying to make your dough. You're not going to put yourself on the line. There's like one moment where I wrote down like later where when somebody did finally go like, okay, no, it's not going to be you guys. It's going to be me. I'm throwing myself on the wire. That's the moment of like, that typical moment that you see in movies where you're just like, oh God, he's going to save us all, or she's going to save us all, whatever it is. But most of the time, like you guys said, you're just like, no, I'm just here to make my money. Nobody even there. I mean, and there's moments where they don't even care what the hierarchy is of, I kept comparing this to Star Trek 2 in my notes, ironically, like trying to figure out, second in command, third in command. And I was like, 15-20 minutes into like the first scary part that they have to deal with. And I know we're like skipping around all this shit. Nobody cares about that. Everybody's just skipping over the fact that, certain people have commands and you have to have protocol and you have to have quarantine and you have to have XYZ.
Yeah, they definitely get rid of those ideals.
Yeah. Exactly. Because like you said, they're not there to be, the heroes of space. They're just like.
Well, also anyone who's worked for a company, there's rules.
Yeah.
And that even, I spent 14 years and then prior another job in corporate. Yeah. So it's funny when I watch stuff like this, because they always talk about Whalen Corp and they're like, what did we sign on and what's the contract? And I was like, corporate guidelines and rules. Yeah. I was like, I know that. And that's the thing where it's like, we have to do this, this, and this, you guys, and follow it around.
Yeah.
But even when you're talking about, I love that in the story that it was written to be, there's no discernible hero yet until you would think it's going to be Dallas, and it kind of is until it's not. And then you're like, ruh-roh, he goes. And then it's like Ripley steps up. She's like, all right, I'm taking control. But O'Bannon even said in direction, the crew is unisex and each part is interchangeable for a man or a woman.
Yeah.
And that was like
the first draft of the script did not
specific for that.
Yeah.
Which is even why I love the way that they're even addressing each other with all their last names.
Yes,
because gender specific cliched gender is not a part of this at all, which is why I love it. I love that what did I write? Something specific. I wrote, like there's no obvious romance, which I love, which I know they like to toss into anything.
I think later that they kind of messed that up too.
They do, I know, which is kind of a bummer when no romantic nonsense was my
which in science fiction, that's a hard line to me sometimes. Yeah. Science fiction. I think sometimes there's some science fiction where it works. Han and Leia works.
Well, I mean, the only offshoot book I read of Star Wars is the courtship of Princess Leia, because the most important thing not the most important thing, but one of the most important things to me as a Star Wars fan is that Han and Leia got married and got together. And that's like huge thing. And I love that. And that's where it works in that world.
But that world also is a world where you can have time for that.
Exactly.
That's a world where people can have relationships, and because it's also this kind of legacy kind of thing where, I mean, I think as a fan in the 90s reading like the Timothy Zahn books and reading them now again, it's building that structure of saying, this is a world of, this is also a lived-in world, but it's just not as believable a lived-in world.
Right.
And I think in this kind of the corporate environment, see, the one thing I do kind of maybe differ with the way that you're laying it out, because I mean, there's no, it's not like Star Trek. These guys did not go to the academy before they could get on the ship.
Right.
They don't know. They just know what the rules are and what their jobs are.
They're
probably
hired.
Job training.
Yeah.
They don't have
just a team working together.
Yeah. But at the same time, I definitely see a class structure.
Oh,
It goes out of the window for a while there, but they start off, the first conversation they really have is, no, you see, we're, contract players. You guys are corporate,
Right, with Brett and Parker,
Yeah.
or like we got to get our
Complaining about-
paychecks.
Yeah.
Right,
Do we
which
get
even
full-
goes to remind me to my the construction dudes that were out my house and took like extra time
Yeah.
to get stuff done that we had to get done. But that's that kind of, and then the other group is a little more like corporate.
Yeah.
Well, because they're that's, to me, I think of it in the world of the full-time employee versus the part-time employee or the freelance worker.
Yeah.
So these guys are freelance. They're kind of the grunts of the group.
Mm-hmm.
They possibly these are the guys who are in a different category pay scale wise, because maybe they have a different job skill requirement.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say the way that it's laid out, it feels to me that Ripley and Lambert and Dallas and all of them have had a degree requirement for their job. Okay, I'm gonna say they had to have a bachelor's to have that position.
They
where the other
probably
guys
did.
Probably had like a high school.
Yeah.
It felt like that kind of structure to me.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that wasn't in my job description because that wasn't in my, my requirement skill list,
Yeah.
And not in any way to say that that's a good or bad. I'm just saying that it feels like that structure when you're, as somebody who, looks at job applications, and applies for things on occasion, you look at those structural differences.
Yes.
And I see these as guys who are pay to play contractors who are very much also, if you think of the way the ship is laid out, they're below decks.
Right.
So they're kind of that subpar that we kind of associate with the kind of grunt work situation on like this kind of corporate level. Their technical skills, maybe like they're more like the engineering.
They're engineer guys.
There's
yes.
Mechanical engineering.
Yeah. These are the guys who are going to fix your machine to get you out of there on time, or you're the guys, it's your job to go out there and do whatever it is you do. I don't care. I stay in the ship.
Right.
Yeah.
And that class structure is very, it's, maybe this is me watching it, someone maybe 10 years older than the last time I watched it.
Right.
Yeah.
Thinking about it in the structure of, I get it. If I was not contracted for this type of thing, I wouldn't want to risk my neck for it either. So,
no, exactly.
Of course.
So,
and if you're not getting a Sheridan in the end, they kept saying like, so where's my
full share?
What's my cut about? What's my exactly? Am I getting full share? What is this? And he's like, for now, don't worry about it. Do your job. And then later, Ripley was almost being a little patronizing too. She's just like, you'll get what's coming to you.
But
AKA,
I love
that might not be the same as what's coming to me.
Right.
That's true.
Because, like you said, I'm a step above. Like, but just do your job.
Which is very corporate America.
Corporate.
Yeah.
But
and I go home and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And I was also in this viewing of it. I was like, because I watched it twice this week because I watched both cuts, and I even pointed that out this afternoon to my husband. I was like, "Hey, I never realized before until watching it the other night. Parker, is that his name?
Parker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're having that argument conversation that's not quite an argument conversation. Like it's in that weird gray area of I'm not going to yell at you because you're my superior.
Right, but I'm like frustrated with you. Yeah.
So and Ripley's very much getting that kind of like aggro kind of feedback onto them. And the minute she walks out of the screen, he turns off all the things that are making all the noise that are making them scream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we didn't need to have that pipe on.
Yeah.
Okay, good now. I just wanted to make her uncomfortable in the situation.
Yeah.
Some of that's all way so true to life, which is also why I love this, because anyone who watches it can identify it in one way or the other with anybody in the crew or pieces of the crew in general as like the human condition of being at work.
Yeah.
This is just a really stressful day.
And not always
this is the worst day.
Your coworkers.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, whoa, that reminds me of times.
Yeah. There's
times
a lot
in
of
the job in my life.
Yeah.
Where you have to be you have to be corporate mean. So it's the like when we write, on an email, we're like warmest regards or something.
Right.
Which we used to call it the corporate fuck you when our team would write something like that.
Yeah. It's when you write like, as per your previous email,
as per my previous email, as per our conversation earlier. Remember I said this?
This is me putting it in print to cover my ass. Yeah. That. All of those things definitely come through. I mean,
it does.
But I was also in putting this in perspective with the movie The Thing, with Carpenter.
Oh yeah, that's another
And
team.
thinking about that is it's another, and I think I mentioned this in the Thing episode,
Mhm.
if you go back and watch that one, but it's another one of these ensemble casts.
Mhm.
It's all about this claustrophobic, confined situation that they're all living in, and they don't 100% get along.
Oh.
Because how many people are really going to be able to get along for that?
No, all
It
different
just-
people, different personalities. It's
And
tough.
those are contracted guys too.
Yep.
You know, so
I'm here for my
there's
paycheck.
so many correlations
Let's
between
get
these
this
two
going.
movies to me.
Yeah. Besides, like the body horror, even the horror in general,
Yeah.
that I feel
Organic
this,
horror.
the organic horror that this created that echoes in everything after, because of how groundbreaking it freaking is.
And what I will use this as a segue for all of the wonderful peace and harmony that we were talking about before, of this wonderful crew of people and artisans coming together to create this beautiful thing that they all loved.
Yeah.
There is the one person, maybe not the one only. I mean, O'Bannon can tell you some, like, he had crazy stories of the situation, but Jerry Goldsmith,
Oh yes, I forgot about the.
yeah. So here's the one person who was very unhappy with the way Alien came out.
There's always somebody.
Right. So Jerry Goldsmith, Goldsmith, sorry, he's the composer for the film. You will definitely know this name if you've watched this as well, because at this channel, he did Planet of the Apes. He did The Omen. He did so many
famous, amazing scores.
I was gonna say, I love the music of The Omen.
Logan's Run. So you want to talk some like 70s sci-fi. Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Okay, this movie's slow as hell, but the music's pretty good.
The music is good. You're right.
The guy's he's
Poltergeist. Psycho 2, Gremlins.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
What's more iconic than the Gremlins theme?
We also did Legends.
Yeah, there you go.
Burbs, Leviathan, Total Recall, even The Mummy, Explorers, which is one of my favorite like 80s.
Oh wow, yeah.
Oh wow.
He is like, you know, if it's not John Williams, at this period in film, it's him. So here's the man he's brought in to make the score for this film because of his legacy, right? And he has history with Fox because of the Planet of the Apes series. He didn't just do the first one; he did most. I think he did 3 or 4 of the scores.
Oh wow!
For those, so he's a known entity for them in science fiction, and he gets on there and he finds out that the editor and the sound designer had made a rough cut, and this is very common to do what they call a temp cut. So they did a temp score. And a temp score, you know, like when you're watching a trailer for a movie and the score is not the score that's going to be in that movie because you know it is, because it's a score from some other movie that you already loved.
Like in a previous episode where you and I talked about why the Bram Stoker's Dracula main score ended up in trailers of other movies after Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Same thing with The Matrix, same thing with The Crow.
Used to drive me up a wall.
I never noticed
that. But it was because they owned that already and
Yep.
had to toss it in before it was like finished, but they could slap that in on the TV and in the theaters.
Yeah, so they knew that they were hiring Jerry Goldsmith to score the film. So what they did was they go through the library of his other works, and they start putting his other pieces as temp in place and scenes,
like placeholders, right?
Yes,
right. It's only supposed to be placeholders.
Yeah.
So he gets the script and he sees some of the footage and he really loves this movie and he's got all these great ideas for how we can make this mysterious and strange and blah blah blah. And he writes this huge score that he spends like weeks to work on, plays it for Ridley Scott, and Ridley Scott's like, nah, I don't like it. So he's like, so what did you want? And he's like, more like this thing that you did on that thing. And I was like, oh, that again? I could do that, I guess. So he's like, the thing that took me weeks to make that I loved. Versus the thing I wrote in like 2 hours because that's what he wanted, is what we end up thinking of as the title sequence. Is not, he had a whole totally different thing in mind.
Oh, wow.
And then he writes all these other parts to find out when he finally sees the film that they kept his temp score for some of it. They bought the rights to music he had done in other films to just reuse it. He was so livid.
Oh, boo.
So understandably so, for sure.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree.
And he's like, I know this is my job.
I can make music for film, guys. I've done it once or twice.
Trust me. And nobody trusted him. So he even said in one of the interviews I watched, he said, I would love for them to re-edit it with the music that I did right. you know, so I can at least see it, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
irony of ironies, they put out a score album that has all the stuff that he wrote that never got used.
Oh, that's just silly.
That's dumb.
Because I guess they figured when we spent the money for the orchestra.
They're like, here, you can have, thanks, guy.
You can have the soundtrack that's not even connected to the movie anyway.
So now it's like a fantasy score. You know, this is like some fanfic score.
Exactly.
You know. So that was a little heartbreaking for me, particularly.
That is rough as a musician, Vic.
Film scores.
So yes.
Oh my God.
And I love his music too. I want to hear.
Yeah.
Now I gotta dig out my Alien CD and see if what I have is that version.
Right.
Yeah.
See if it's his.